everyone, and welcome to Rising Stories Podcast. I'm Corine, Sandifer, your host. Each week I interview a business owner or an author. Here on Rising Stories, we chat about building businesses and working like a boss and doing all the tasks that we have to do. You'll learn about the best apps, how these business women are making it work, and all the best tools and practices. Because this show is called Rising Stories, my guest will share everyday stories that are sure to touch your heart and soul. We also hit on topics like work-life balance, living with intention, and dreaming big. Before we start the show today, I wanted to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you for listening and for supporting Rising Stories. You are important to me, which is why I continue on with this show and which is why I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your feedback on the show and how we can make it better. You know, desires and needs change all of the time, and I want to make sure that we are meeting yours and that we are staying current with what's out there. So, if you have some feedback, please send me a direct message via Facebook or Instagram. You can find me at Corine Sandifer on both. And if you love the show and want to show some love, please head over to iTunes and leave me a review and some stars. I would love to hear from you. So, on with the show. My guest today is Jandra Sutton. Jandra is a young adult fiction author with a passion for traveling and higher learning. Wanting to see a book where the main character was deaf and not finding one, Jandra decided to write one herself. I so enjoyed meeting her and hearing her tenacity and passion to go after what she wants to see happen in her life and in this world. Nothing is stopping this gal. We also talk about how she is reaching her audience with the latest online outlets and tools. And in this podcast interview, Jandra shares about taking risks and how she sat with heads of state at the 2012 Nato summit. And hey, listeners, at the end of this podcast will be a special deal from Jandra you don't want to miss. So stay tuned for that. And so here is my conversation with Jandra. Hi, Jandra.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How about you?
Great. I'm so glad to finally get you on the show. I have been watching and seeing all the things that you're writing. You are a writer.
So I am now an author and full-time freelance writer. I have published one book this year, and my book came out actually in July. And it's a young adult fiction contemporary novel about a 17-year-old girl who is deaf, and she's struggling with what it means to be normal. So I really love writing young adult fiction, reaching younger audiences about diverse and really relatable topics.
Yeah, and you know, I really can relate to that. I love the fact that there is a large movement, and I'm so excited about it because it's a movement where people are starting to understand better, you know, used to when things, you know, when people had differences in their bodies or the way that they've, you know, functioned, that they were either like put away or just, you know, second-class citizens. And now it's so beautiful to see the movement of let's embrace, I mean, everyone has differences, right? We all have our own thing, whether, you know, and so what do you feel about that? How are you seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, just that people are embracing everyone's differences, which I love?
Absolutely. Yeah, so especially in the world of publishing, particularly with young adult fiction, there is a huge movement for diversity and accurate representation in fiction. And for me, that's something that's very important because I come from a big family, and my younger two siblings are actually both adopted. So my little sister, she is Black, and her grandmother or great-grandmother is from Egypt. So there's a big, strong tie to culture there. And then my brother is actually Filipino, adopted from the Philippines, and he's deaf with cochlear implants. So growing up, you know, I was really lucky. I could see myself in all the characters in the books that I read and the TV shows and movies that I watched because I had the same color of skin or I looked like them.
Mm-hmm.
But for my siblings, as I got older, I realized that they didn't have that, especially for my younger sister. You know, when she watched Disney Channel, how many black girls were on Disney Channel? And if there were black girls on Disney Channel, they were always one stereotype, usually. And so that's how she felt she needed to act. And I kind of took issue with that. And so I wanted her to be able to see herself in books, and I wanted my brother to be able to see himself in books, and all of the kind of different ways that they could expand and grow as individuals so that they didn't have to be pigeonholed based on these characteristics.
Yeah, that's just so beautiful that you took your life experiences and that you created something that is needed, because there are plenty out there, like you said, that need to look at someone that looks like them, and or read about someone that is experiencing life the way they are. It is so sad that, you know, and even myself, I remember sitting down thinking, you know, there was this show and I was like trying to relate to them, but I didn't look like them, and I didn't have the same things that they did. And it's kind of, it makes you feel a little bit of an outcast, or just, you know, kind of continues that downward spiral of like, you know, I am not normal, which, you know, we are all, I'm hoping that word is gone, because no one's normal. We're all very different. And,
exactly.
So
it's kind of like there's some people who talk about the word colorblind, and there's a big movement today to talk about that word and how it's not necessarily a good thing to be colorblind, because you want to recognize and celebrate those heritage differences and those cultural differences between each other. So it's,
And I love that, that you were told by someone that you are like Forrest Gump, because you have stories that you tell. And of course, this is called Rising Stories. So I absolutely love stories. Tell us a story that you have told that gave you that name, Forrest Gump.
Oh gosh. So my previous boss gave me that nickname because we were sitting at a dinner and we were talking to a literary agent from New York who was a friend of hers, and her husband was there. And they said something about, well, such and such. And I said, oh, I've actually got like some related history with that person, or that, I can't remember what exactly it was in that specific situation. But, you know, throughout my career history itself, I've always kind of joked around that I have such a varied resume for someone of my age, that I've got, you know, work experience, especially in the publishing industry, on almost every single side of publishing. So I was a librarian, and when I was a librarian, I was an acquisitions librarian. So I actually dealt with the buying of books that we were actually stocking in the library. And then I worked for a publisher, and I've now worked for a literary PR agency doing marketing. And then now I'm an author. So I've done all different sides of the publishing industry, almost every position that you can do, which is really interesting and really cool. So for me, some of the stories that I've told people are how I went out on a limb and got in a car with two strangers when I was living in the UK, and ended up having a really interesting story come out of it. But at the time, it was such a random thing to take that kind of risk. And I've had that happen so many times throughout my life, where I just do it. Something happens, I do it. It ends up being a really great story. I went traveling for 2 weeks in Europe by myself. Ended up in Istanbul, which is, you know, a really diverse, exciting city to be in. I was in Italy, I was in Greece, all by myself. And everyone just went, why? How could you do that by yourself for 2 weeks? I just had a small suitcase. I was like, well, why not?
Right. That is amazing. And, you know, I think that I don't think people give other people enough credit that, I mean, there are some great people in this world. And I think that you just have to be, I mean, if you are traveling alone, I mean, for anyone, even for a man, you know, who looks like they're stronger than, you know, us smaller women or whatever, but you just need to look out and just kind of be, you know, adventurous with, you know, but with your eyes wide open, just like, okay, well, this doesn't seem comfortable. I mean, I feel like within us, we know where danger lies. I think that's just something that we have innately in us. And so I'm all for the adventure. That's awesome. I mean, I think that more people need to follow their instincts, if that makes sense, and just do it. Like you were like, I did it because I could, you wanted to and you did it.
Yeah. And I think that for me personally, it's been an assessment of risk. So when I was younger, I took a lot of risks. I kind of jumped out into the deep end and learned how to swim on the fly because I felt like I enjoyed life that way. And I've gone through phases where I've definitely not been that fearless. And sometimes people are like, wow, I can't believe you did that. And there are times when I say that. I can't believe I did that because I've lived in different stages in my life where there have been stages where I've been rife with stress and anxiety and worry. I've been too afraid to step out my front door, essentially. And then there are times like now where I sit down and go, okay, there's two different kinds of risk. There's risk that, yes, puts your life in danger, where you're in situations that you maybe shouldn't be in. And I kind of relate it to skydiving without a parachute. That's a big risk. Who wants to do that? But there are other risks that don't actually pose that kind of threat to your maybe health, well-being, and safety. And when those situations are at hand, I say, why not? It's terrifying. Take the risk, do it, because you don't know what's going to happen. And for me, I've always said that guidance comes in life, whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, things happen after you take the first step. So for me, it's always been about taking that first step and readjusting after the fact, because I will walk through the door and then I will find out that the door is locked or I find out that I'm actually veering off to the left here. That happened to me when I went to grad school. I actually finished college, decided to go backpacking for a year with my best friend, got to Europe. And a week and a half after I got to Europe, I got an email from one of the grad schools I applied to saying, congratulations, you got a full ride. So I had already made a life plan. I'd already decided to spend the next year traveling the world. And then a week and a half in, get this email that's like, nope, never mind. You have to go back to the States for a couple months, save your money, and then come back to Europe to spend a year at grad school in the UK. Wow. Yeah, that was a huge, huge thing to happen. And it was definitely a risk. And I had taken a risk to begin with. But
yeah. And so you went back?
Yeah. So I had to turn around a week later, fly back to the States, live there with my family for 2 to 3 months until the semester started, and then turn around and go back to England as it was, and live there for a year and do grad school and get a master's in only a year.
Wow. Yeah. Now, what do you think that, what was it that you felt like maybe prepared you to be this risk taker and, just taking chances? What do you think prepared you for that?
I think my parents were definitely part of it, but I've always had a strong belief in ability and in everybody's ability. And this is something that I've been very lucky. My husband actually has the same philosophy that anyone can do anything that they put their minds to it. Yes, there's always differences in where your starting point is, but as far as ability and sheer drive and willpower, we all have that. And it's just about embracing it and digging in and going for it. So for me, it's just, I think I've been lucky that I've believed so strongly that if I wanted something, I could do it. And so far, that's proven correct about 90% of the time. And anytime that I haven't achieved something, I've actually realized in hindsight, either it was the wrong time, I didn't give 100%, or there was an external factor. But in other cases, it's just about, digging my heels in and really making it happen. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I bet someone out there is listening and thinking, well, she probably had funds or she had this. And I think that we all kind of tried to, make excuses for not taking risks, or just doing something,
I actually didn't have any funds and I didn't have any real thing giving me an advantage over one person or the other than the fact that my family was very supportive. But financially, I come from a small town in Northeast Indiana. I didn't have any major like situation in my life that made me, have such a huge leg up where I got like, all my college paid for. I went to a private school, $100,000 in debt for most of my classmates. I got lucky that I had some scholarships, so my debt wasn't quite that crazy. But when I went backpacking, I was working full time my senior year through college so that I could save up money to go backpacking. I ended up working throughout grad school so that I could pay for room and board. When I got back from grad school, I couldn't find a job for a year. I applied for 347 jobs in one single calendar year before I got one. And during that time, I was working 4 part-time jobs all at once.
Wow. And so, I think if you really set your mind to it, you look at what you've done. You can do things. And so I always hear people are like, if you really want to travel, then you just save the money. You just, do it. You've got to make sacrifices and to do something that you really love. And so I think that people need to really think about and review, like, if they do want to travel and they want to take those risks and do stuff and be adventurous and go on a journey, then just do it. Plan on it and save your money like you did. That is amazing.
It's about really making the time for things. I've done National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, which is the month of November, and you basically aim to write a single book in a month, about 50,000 words. And I've done it with a couple of friends. And the first year I did it, my friend and I both completed it, and we were like, yeah, this is great. The second year, I was the only one out of my friends who completed it. And I understood that life happens. Some people got busy, but then there are also the people who, when you think about it, you can still make this work. Life does happen, but it's about waking up an hour earlier to fit in the time to write. It's about maybe not watching Netflix. For me, I stopped watching hour-long Netflix shows and started watching 20-minute ones only because I knew that was an extra, 30, 40 minutes of my day that I was getting to write. It was making small sacrifices and able to get the things that I really, really wanted.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think it's just, you have found your passion. You have found what you really want to do, and you set your mind to it. And I think that's, of course, as a life coach myself, that I work with people every day that are trying to find that passion, trying to define what it is that they really want to do in life. And of course, it's ever changing for everyone, of course, but it seems like you've
shifted
found
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had different things that I was striving for at different times in my life. I used to want to be a musician and an actress. I used to want to be a journalist. And then there was about a year or so after I moved to Nashville in 2013 where I had nothing. And it was just coasting through life. I was working full time in a job that I wasn't particularly interested in and just kind of felt bleh. So I definitely get not having something to drive you. And that can be frustrating, but it'll come.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about this experience you had at Nato.
So when I was in grad school in the UK, I actually found out that Nato was doing a competition where they were asking people to make a 1-minute video about what peace and security meant for them. And I saw it and I went, I love politics and foreign policy for one. I have a master's degree in history. And I thought, I have to do this. So no one else had made a video. I was the first person to make one.
Seriously?
And I sat down and made, and it was 2 or 3 days after they had launched the contest and no one had made one yet. So I made my video, 60 seconds, put it on YouTube. It's still there somewhere. And sure enough, a couple of months later, I didn't really think anything of it. I get an email from NATO saying, congratulations, you've been chosen to be a NATO IREP. And what that was, it meant that I was a citizen journalist being sent to the 2012 NATO summit in Chicago. They're flying me there, putting me up in a hotel so that I can report from the conference as, from the NATO summit as a citizen from the outside looking in, what my view was. So I was one of 20 people chosen out of hundreds of applicants. I was later told by one of the guys who set up the program that they saw my video and they were like, yes, this is what we're looking for. she's probably coming.
Cool.
So that was really cool. And it was a great experience because I got to sit in with one-on-one private sessions with like heads of state and people who are high up in foreign affairs and have conversations that you never would have expected to have. For me, it was very eye-opening. I learned so much while I was there. And then as I was writing on Nato's blog, they actually had a blog that they were operating at the time, and they would publish our pieces on there. One of my articles was actually, it ended up being the most read piece on Nato's blog ever.
Wow.
So that was just something that I kind of sat down and went, okay, people apparently like my writing. And then that's when the Secretary General of NATO actually followed me on Twitter. And then
oh my goodness,
he contacted somebody else to contact me to make sure that it was okay. So I was like, this is so surreal. I'm having the Secretary General of NATO ask for my permission to follow me on Twitter.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I bet it was eye-opening and of course you travel. And so that was probably, I feel like when people travel to outside the United States, you get a total new worldview, but being one-on-one and sitting with those interviews with heads of state, I bet that was eye-opening.
Yeah, you really don't get that kind of experience anywhere else when you're in just a small room where, I mean, there were like the 20 of us in the room together, but anybody could ask any question that they had. And then we had the opportunity, the first night we went to a cocktail party with, politicians, and Rahm Emanuel there, the mayor of Chicago, he was there. So, yeah.
That's great. So tell me, now that you are in Nashville, tell me so you've written your book and it's out, but I see that you write for other outlets like Medium, and I'm wondering, what else came from being that representative in the NATO summit. But tell me, what does it look like for you? And of course, I know that as a small business owner, or you're just kind of a self-published person, you make your own schedule. But what does a typical day in the life of Jandra look like for you?
So typically I wake up pretty early because I do have a puppy and it's just diving right in. Mm-hmm. So I make time for fitness in my day because that's something that's very important to me. I've discovered that it's not about how I look, it's about how I feel. I actually really enjoy lifting weights. And I feel better when I'm exercising regularly, and I'm less stressed, and therefore I'm able to get more done. So it's it doesn't make sense all the time, but by setting aside time to exercise, I actually get more time to be productive, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's definitely not. And I spend a lot of time writing. So whether I'm writing a blog post or submitting an article to be published on like Hello Giggles or Brit & Co. or something like that, or I'm writing my own books or planning for my books. I also do a lot of time on social media. So I have a background as a marketer, so I've been keeping that up as I go along. I've done some freelance work in marketing, so there are times when I'm doing that kind of stuff. I also have a growing audience of young adults that I'm constantly in communication with. So I started writing books on WattPad, actually, which is this great storytelling platform, social media, that I've got 6,000 followers on there, and I have to post almost every day. Wow. So between that and Instagram and Twitter and everything else, that takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it all, but do you limit your time at the computer, like during the day? Do you say, I'm going to do a little bit here and then maybe go, fix a lunch or whatever, and then come back to it? Do you schedule times, or do we just kind of like hit it and then you just like grab a sandwich if you can? Or
I like to do transition periods. I find that I am not the type of person that can just sit at my computer for 8, 10, 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
One, I'll end up losing hours in there where I'm scrolling Facebook or Twitter or BuzzFeed articles.
True. Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
So I do a lot of intentional stuff. I actually bullet journal to keep my days and my tasks pretty outlined.
Yeah.
And then what I do from there is like yesterday, for example, woke up, got around, started writing, wrote for 3 hours until lunchtime, and then I will break for lunch and do a very intentional break so that it's a mental transition into whatever else I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll try and cluster things in, things that kind of make sense. So if I need to do more administrative tasks, I'm going to do them all at once. And then I'm going to go take a break. Like if I need to run an errand, I'll do that as my break to run to the post office, come home, eat lunch, and then move on to the next thing. Because you do need longer stretches of time because you want to make the most of the time that you have. And if you like split it up too much, you have to end up switching gears a lot, and you can lose a lot of time switching gears between things.
Yes.
But if you have things that are similar, there's not as much switching going on. So that kind of streamlines, save you some time, but at the same time, I personally need those breaks. And I know other people are like me that they need to sit down for an hour and just not type,
Mm-hmm. I know I do. Yeah, I do. When I do my podcasting, I definitely take a major break in the middle of the day just because I've got to, it just helps, especially with writing. I think just removing yourself from one place and going somewhere else just brings you, even walking outside, taking a quick walk or something, just brings those creative juices back for some reason.
Yeah. And I try to be pretty intentional about it. And at the same time, while yes, I've got a lot of drive and I spend a lot of time writing, there are also times in my life where I don't. So I just got married a couple weeks ago, and that whole period, thank you. So there was about a month and a half, 2 months there where I did not write a chapter at all, which as an author, that was heartbreaking. And it was so difficult because I was like, I should be writing. But at the same time, I was so stressed with everything going on in my life because it wasn't just wedding planning. I was also being published by a couple of outlets. I had other things going on. I couldn't get stuff done. So yes, there are times when you need to really dig in and push through, but there are also times where you need to recognize my tank is on empty. So I need to really cool down. And I like to equate it. So I love analogies, and I have this really great analogy that there are times when not only your tank is on empty, but your engine is overheating. And so there's a difference between cooling off your engine and refilling your gas tank. So for me, cooling off my engine is just reading, watching Netflix, relaxing, hanging out with friends. That's just letting my brain relax. But when I'm on empty, when I feel completely burned out, that's when I need to turn into learning, turn into the writing community, and get refilled and recharged and ready to go again and excited about my work. And when I learned to differentiate those two things and really learned how to identify them in myself, that completely changed the game for me.
Yeah, you've said a mouthful. That is so true, especially just that analogy. I love analogies too. So I can so relate to that because I've been there, done that. And it's like, it can be frustrating. And once if you're in that and then things start coming at you, and like you were saying when you were about to get married, and it's like, it can give you like this, feeling. You can go from that into like, woe is me. Like this is, I'm not any good. I'm not doing what I need to be doing. And it's like, it can be such a downer. But if you recognize it and just say, you know what, this is a season that has a beginning, a middle, and end. And, one day I'll be back into writing mode or whatever. So I totally agree with that. That's very, very true. So, okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions. What is your favorite app? Do you have a favorite app?
Favorite app. Oh gosh, I have so many favorite apps. Besides social media related apps.
Yeah.
I really like Trello. So Trello is a list building app that lets you create boards, and within those boards you create lists, and then all of the items on those lists are completely movable, and you can add notes to them and attachments and pictures and links. But the thing I love about Trello is that, one, I use it on my desktop, my phone, my iPad, everything. I use it to plan out my books. I use it to plan out my content strategy. I use it for pretty much everything. But the great thing is all of these individual cards are shiftable between lists as well. So you can have a list of like ideas and a list of things I'm currently working on, a list of things I'm waiting for other people, and a list of things that are done. And then you can move each card through the cycle so that it kind of tracks your productivity and tracks what's done and what isn't done. So it's kind of like an upgraded paper list. It's almost like a virtual corkboard of sorts that I absolutely love.
Is it like in a grid form? Like when you see it on your desktop, is it? I just can't imagine. I'm going to have to check it out.
Yeah, it's just Trello.com, Trello, and it's a grid form that there's just a bunch of columns, and then you can add as many note cards to each column as you want. You can have multiple boards, which is really nice because then under one account you could have, like I have a board for each of my books, which is really nice for organization. And I can share those boards with people. So if I'm collaborating with someone on a project, we can track who's doing what and where it's at in the life cycle of the project. So I really like it. It's free. It's great. I recommend it to a lot of people, and it's great for organization and for keeping everything in one place.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to check it out. And you also do bullet journaling. So I'm into that. Although I don't do it very well, I might add, but I enjoy making those lists, and so that's
I love using my bullet journal because for me, I'm not very artistically gifted when it comes to like drawing or anything like that. But I am a very creative person. So, and then the nice thing about using a bullet journal, especially on grid paper and having a ruler, is that it's very meticulous, and I can spend like 30 minutes planning my week, being a perfectionist, but also getting a little bit of creativity out. And I find it to be very refreshing. So I love bullet journaling.
Me too. So tell me, what book are you reading now? Are you you're a reader? So you said, what's a book that you're reading?
I don't think I have several that I'm reading right now. I'm reading a lot of YA books right now, just trying to see what's going on and what's out there. A recent book that I just finished, actually, because I think I finished it about a week ago, was The Unexpected Everything. So that was a really good YA book. The reason why I absolutely love this book is because, yes, it's a young adult fiction, but the book is all about planners and how there's a girl that she's got her whole life planned. She's about to go to college. She's got an internship before she goes to college, and then everything gets changed. Her plan falls apart. And she ends up learning, I won't spoil the story for you, but she ends up learning that she's enjoying life more if she doesn't stress about things sticking to the plan. So it's not about not having a plan, but it's about being okay if it doesn't go according to plan.
I need to read that book. That sounds
so it's
really
a really
good.
Cute story. It was great. I think I read it in like a day. It was just such a relaxing, fun little read.
So since you're in Nashville, I always ask Nashville people, what is their favorite restaurant?
My favorite restaurant. I don't know if I have just one.
Well, what was the last one you went to? I know there's so many here. It's hard to choose.
I don't even remember the last one that I went to because with wedding, there were so many people here. We were going out to eat a lot. Basically anything in Germantown. I love Germantown. I love going to Butchertown Hall, Fifth and Taylor. The Juice Bar in Germantown is one of my favorite places to work. They actually know one of my dogs from sight because they love her.
The Juice Bar in Germantown. I'll have to check that out. Is it nice and quiet? And is it?
It's not very quiet because
they're juicing.
They have a lot of people. Yeah, they're juicing and they have people coming and going. And then where the Juice Bar is situated is actually sharing a building with like 3 or 4 other places. But they each have their own interior, and then they each have their own patio. And so the Juice Bar's patio is open, and it's usually, they're not packed.
Okay.
There's usually at most like 5 people there. And it's nice to sit outside. If it's too hot, you can sit inside. Usually there's nobody inside because everybody wants to be outside, which is kind of nice when you want some quiet. I like to sit outside. There's a big table, there's chairs, there's little, pub style tables. There's a ping pong table for when you need a break. I love it. They have coffee, they have juice, they have smoothies, they have food. And it's just really, really nice to sit outside. They have Wi-Fi, enjoy something that's a little bit different than the typical coffee shop.
I'll have to try that. I'm always looking for a good place to kind of get away out of the home office and into something, just being around people and being able.
Yeah, and they're a chain. They're actually the company I believe was started in Nashville, but now they have juice bar locations all around Nashville and all around the country that are popping up. But the one thing I love about this particular location is that it feels like a small neighborhood place. They learn my name. They recognize me. They recognize my dog. As you go in, you can't really get that in a city.
True.
So it's really nice to have that, I know you. You're Matt. You're the manager. So
that's good. I love that. So what 3 things are you absolutely loving these days?
3 things that I am absolutely loving these days. WattPad. I mentioned that I write on WattPad. I actually love it. I tell everybody about it. WattPad is a free online storytelling platform that lets writers publish their work and readers read for free. So it's primarily popular amongst young adults, but it's a great place to kind of get instant reader feedback if you're a writer, especially if you're writing in one of the genres that's really popular on WattPad, like young adult romance or historical romance or something like that. You can get, if you publish your chapter, there's inline comments. You can see what people like and what people are responding to. You can get to know your readers. So I was able to build over the course of a year a dedicated audience of 6,000 followers who are readers who love my books versus having a couple thousand followers on Twitter or Instagram that some of them might read my books. Some of them might be interested in my books.
So that's your target market right there. Yeah.
Yeah. And plus for me being also a reader, it means there's free books to read. And that's really nice. Not all of them are great. Some of them are. Some of them have now been traditionally published. The company itself is wonderful. They're very, very communicative. They're always willing to work and talk to people. So I love WattPad just because it's fun. It's a new technology. And I think that they're really changing the publishing industry, which is really cool to watch. Other things that I'm obsessed with right now, oh gosh, probably bullet journaling because I spend so much time on it. Another thing that I'm obsessed with right now, weightlifting. Weirdly enough, I talk about it with a lot of people. I think that as a woman, I had a huge fear of weightlifting because I didn't want to get bulky. And before I got married, I started working with a personal trainer who decided she was going to start having me deadlift. And I was just like, hold on, what? So she started me lifting really, really heavy weights, like imagine big barbells with like the huge weights on the side. And sure enough, by weightlifting, I have had more changes in my body than when I was running 5 miles a day, from when I was doing yoga regularly, from anything else. I don't have big bulky muscles or anything like that. And then the coolest thing is about weightlifting, and the thing that I love is how capable I feel. I get that endorphin buzz, but I also know that I can deadlift 205 pounds. And I am not I had the owner of the gym that I work out at, this big, massive dude who's like bodybuilder, right? He came up to me one day and he's like, I was watching you deadlift. You were crushing it for a small person. And I was like, so yeah, I'm really obsessed with it. I'm constantly telling people about weightlifting and about nutrition and what I've learned over the past 6 months. So it's something that I'm really interested in and just constantly reading more about.
That's awesome. I need to get into that. I totally need more. I hurt my arm, so I'm kind of being a baby about it and taking care of it and stuff. But I love exercising, and weightlifting is fun, but I also injured my arm during that, but I'm going to get back into it. You're inspiring me to go for it and keep going.
It's just super. It was like it's super fun. It changed my life. It absolutely did. I'm someone who I had an eating disorder in college and have always had struggles with body image and hating the way that I looked. And now, thanks to this really obscure thing that I didn't expect, that's changing drastically. So I'm constantly evangelizing weightlifting to people.
That's awesome. Very inspiring. Well, thanks so much, Jandra, for coming on. This has been so fun getting to know you and hearing your
Thank
stories. You. I love it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, she has inspired me to travel and to take more risks. I want to be just like her and just step out and do it. We should all take the plunge and add to our stories. I hope you enjoyed this interview. And as a special offer to our listeners for this podcast, Jandra will be offering and lowering her price on her ebook version of Fragile to just 99 cents. So just click on the link provided in the podcast description to grab that deal. And this offer expires September 22nd, 2017. And as always, if you missed something that you wanted to jot down from this episode, no worries, because I have added a whole lot to the iTunes description down below in your app, and it's also on the show notes at CorineSandifer.com. Please consider supporting Rising Stories podcast by purchasing books and products mentioned on the show with the link provided in the show notes. I hope you have enjoyed the show. Thanks so much for listening, and keep rising in your story.